Hey guys, Paulstron here, and today let's talk about my Hidden Blade Poison Autobomber Occultist. So you might be confused here if you watch a lot of my build guides. Why doesn't this have the normal intro? What's a build showcase? What's the difference to a build guide? Basically, all I wanted to do here is kind of give you a taste of the build without really recommending it. And the biggest problem is getting the shield, right? So there is a lot of builds that can actually run without the shield that could just, I don't know, get a little bit better if you have it. But for this build, the shield is completely required, and this is the Squire. We're going to talk all about it. But basically just front-loaded here. As of this recording, this shield is like 70x. It went up a lot since I bought it. I bought it for a little less than 40x, which is also very expensive, but I thought maybe it would go down. But GG made it very rare, so just a disclaimer right here, if you want to build this one, it's going to be extremely expensive, and there's probably better things you can do with your currency. What I wanted to go for is kind of a Autobomber style of play, and I wanted to be a hipster. I didn't want to do Herald of Thunder for the, I don't know, third time or whatever. I wanted to make something new, so this is just basically a fun build showcase, what I've been playing for the last week, so let's get into it. All right, since I don't have the usual intro, before I even go into what the build does, I just want to show you this real quick. Now, basically, we have the Hidden Blade, which will spawn blades that just randomly hit enemies. They're actually target seeking, as you can see here, and once enemies die, they explode because of Asenath's Gentle Touch, and I don't really have to do anything. You get phasing from Withering Step. Now, obviously, if you have a phasing flask, right, if you had a Mageblood here, that would be crazy because you have perma-phasing. We can't go Raider, unfortunately, and we also cannot really get the phasing from a Watcher's Eye because we don't have space for haste, and attack speed doesn't do anything for it. More onto that later. But basically, I can just show you the playstyle. Now, Plague Bearer is one of the big ones, right? You just want to go through here, explode basically everything, and sometimes pop your Plague Bearer to get some extra damage going. Then you go into the Realm. Now, one of the things I also wanted to do with this build versus maybe more of a conventional Herald of Thunder Autobomber is make it a little bit more tanky, right? Because if you look at high-tier maps, like tier 16 maps, if you're a Herald of Thunder Autobomber, you might have a rough time here or there. So I wanted to get at least a little bit my HP up, right? I'm using a Taste of Hate. I'm going Ghost Dance. I have quite a bit of EHP. Now, this is pretty early in its development, and my gear is kind of shit because I had to buy the Squire Shield, right? So there wasn't much left for anything else. But basically, this is kind of the playstyle. Sometimes you pop your Plague Bearer, and that's it. So the number one thing I wanted to do with this build is just have a convenient mapper, right? I don't really mind if it's not the best. I just don't want to press a lot of buttons, right? I just really like mindlessly grinding all day. I love the kind of Fire Burst Herald of Thunder playstyle. So that's kind of what I was going for. Now, the single target damage, we do kind of have a little trick here. We have Ancestral Protector Totems. These actually do quite a bit of damage if 6-linked, and we have them 6-linked, so I'm going to show you in a second. Now, you don't have crazy single target, right? This is a mapper. It is what it is. So we just do this, and once the boss is going to come, we're going to put down our Ancestral Protectors. Hopefully, we won't get one-shot, so let's just do this here. This boss is a little bit annoying, so maybe not the best for YouTube showcase. But yeah, these are just grinding on the boss, and now it's dead. And yeah, that's basically the build. Now, let's first go over the basics, because I'm sure a lot of you people haven't actually seen the Hidden Blade ever. Now, this is basically just a dagger that has trigger level 20 Unseen Strike every 0.5 seconds while phasing. This will be our main skill, and this cooldown can be reduced by cooldown reduction. Now, when you put it in here and you start to get phasing, where was it? Yeah, here, Withering Step gives you phasing. You will see that there's one blade shooting out every, I think it's 0.4 seconds with our cooldown reduction right now. You can reduce it even further. Our gear is kind of whatever right now. And basically everything that you put into here will actually amplify this blade. So number one thing you want to do, obviously this is measly, right? Like one blade, this is not going to clear anything. So what you want to do is you want to either go for Greater Volley or GMP. Now, the thing is with Greater Volley, which I currently have in, it looks like this. So you actually get them very concentrated on one point. Whereas with GMP, it looks like this, more of like a star formation. The thing is, for open areas, I actually prefer GMP a little bit over Greater Volley, but it just depends on what you're farming, right? Also, if you have Awakened GMP, obviously you get another additional projectile, even getting more. But overall, I like Greater Volley a lot more because, as you can see here, there's some dead spots with where the Hidden Blade actually goes. And yeah, they're target seeking. So if there's an enemy in a radius, the radius is around like screen wide. like around here, right? If there's an enemy right here, the blades are actually going to seek out that enemy. Now, this skill is a attack, so you scale it like you would any other attack. You need accuracy, you need whatever. We're not really capped right now, but that's where it's at. And you can see here, it fires an additional projectile when you put that in. If you put this in, you get more damage. And now here comes the Squire. So Hidden Blade was already a thing before. It just didn't have the damage, right? It was used for some very finicky things, but not really for a main skill, which it is here. And the Squire changed that completely. Now, the Squire Shield is one of the new Chase uniques. Currently, it's at 70 plus exalts, which is nuts, right? But basically what this does is all sockets are white, blah, 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 quality. Socketed support gems can also support skills from your main hand, which basically means that everything that's in here also supports your Hidden Blade. Now, for a build that doesn't really have that much scaling, for a skill that doesn't have that much scaling options, right? It's not a skill gem. I cannot really do much. It's in the weapon. It's always level 20. I cannot do anything. All I can do is slot these three in. These extra free slots basically mean you more than double your damage. So this is actually the thing that makes this build viable. So if you do not have the Squire, you will not do enough damage. I will say that right now. That's also why I'm not making a dedicated build guide, because I know this is really, really hard to get. But if you have the money, maybe already have the shield, I can highly recommend just giving this a go. But yeah, let's get into the Ascendancy. Now, we are a Occultist, and that is for a few reasons. Number one, Void Beacon is crazy. So the thing about, for example, Plague Bearer that we're using, which is a big part of our damage, is you cannot really scale its damage. It already scales off of the poison damage you dealt, so you cannot really amplify it with supports or anything, but enemy debuffs still increase its damage, right? The enemy gets minus 20 Chaos Reds, which isn't exactly increasing its damage, it's debuffing the enemy, so it works, actually. So for a build that is just supposed to zoom through enemies, this is like 25 to 30% more damage to Plague Bearer, which you can almost get nowhere, right? For example, this note here gives us more chaos damage, which is very nice for our poison, but for the Plague Bearer, it does not increase anything, right? So Void Beacon is special. This is the number one node, the biggest reason to go Occultist, but then you also get Withering Presence, Malediction, more damage taken, also something that works on enemies and debuffs them, right? So that also works with Plague Bearer and your blades, which is very, very cool. And then you have Profane Bloom, obviously a no-brainer. You explode enemies, although we actually go a bit further and we actually go double explosions with Asanas and Profane Bloom. So that's the awesome explosions you see on the screen. It's very, very fun. Good pop sounds, right, for a long play session is very important. And one thing is, we would love to go Raider. Permanent phasing would be kind of quality. But as you can see, for everything that we want to do with this build, which is like mapping, you'll never run out of phasing, right? You don't really click anything, so you cannot interrupt really your Withering Step. The only thing that interrupts your Withering Step where you have perma-phasing is your Plague Bearer, which you press here or there, right? It's fine. So yeah, overall, Occultist, complete no-brainer. All right, so let's go over the items. Number one, obviously the Hidden Blade. This is how the build works. You want to be always phasing. You have reduced attack speed, which doesn't really matter. The Fizz roll does actually matter because obviously poison scales off of your weapon damage if it comes from an attack, and this is a attack. Once again, you also need the accuracy, right? And then the Squire Shield, which is super expensive, as I said already. But yeah, this shield, if you don't have it, don't play the build, is what I would say. Even with the shield, it's not like a crazy boss killer, so you can think, you can already see how this would work without the shield. I just want to preface that again and again. But next up, the helmet. What we want to go for on the helmet is usually you would want more minus to Chaos Res. You would actually want the minus 12 from a Maven Orb, right? What you need a lot on gear is accuracy. We don't have much, but the minus to Chaos Res is the most important thing. And because it also scales your Plague Bearer, because it's a debuff and not a damage increase, right? But it also has the enchant. Withering Step inflicts 3 additional withered debuffs. And this is incredibly important because, as you know, a Autobomber cannot just put down wither totems everywhere, right? So what you want to do is you want to have Anomalous Withering Step already giving you additional withered debuffs, as you can see here. On top of that, we'll have Enhanced for even more. And then you have the Helm Enchant. So everything that comes in your vicinity will immediately get, I think right now it's like 13 Wither debuffs, right? You can get that even more. I think with a 21, I might be wrong here. Maybe you can even get to 14, but all those will just be applied randomly. You don't have to press anything, which is what the build is about. So this Helm Enchant is really, really nice for that. As for the chest armor, you can go for whatever. If you don't really care about being squishy, you can also not go for a Val Regalia. go for something that's a little bit more damage oriented, right? Like I don't know, whatever, a Dendrobate, whatever you want. But I just wanted to actually survive all the Scourge mobs because I was farming a lot of Scourge maps with this as well in Underground Seas, right? And then also a big part of the build is the ulls. Now this is a very specific ulls with Envy, and this is basically an aura that would be like, I don't know, a Chaos Wrath, right? A Wrath, but for Chaos damage. It's a lot less, right? You only get a level 15 Envy. This is not a skill gem, right? So you only get it from this amulet, but this gives you a ton of flat damage, and since this weapon almost has none of that, all we get is the base damage, maybe a little bit on rings, right? And we get Awakened Added Chaos support, but that's basically it for flat damage Chaos scaling. So this amulet is just absolutely huge. It gives us around 40% more damage. So if you want to play the build, also highly recommend that. Otherwise, you will have to find other ways to get flat damage. Then we have Asanas, which is just overkill usually. I mean, you don't have to go with it. I just wanted as many explosions as possible. I'm a sucker for explosions. So yeah, other than that, it gives you some life. Nothing really there. It also gives you temporal chains on hit. And we actually have two curses. We have Despair and temporal chains. As for belt, I mean, you want to have cooldown reduction here. But if you have a Mageblood, I don't think I have to tell you what to do. If you have a Headhunter, I also don't think I have to tell you what to do. So those would obviously be the best. But yeah, other than that, you want to get a lot of cooldown recovery. Definitely look at cooldown recovery rate, especially if you have a Headhunter or something else in the belt slot. I don't know what you're going to do. Definitely get it on boots instead. And talking about the boots, most important thing is movement speed. Now, the aspect of the cat, forget that. I actually used to play with Farwol's Fur, which doesn't really do anything. Don't do it. But yeah, all you want is movement speed, cooldown recovery. Now, Tailwind would be nice as well, because we actually do crit quite a bit, because it's a dagger, has crit implicit. We get some crit here or there. I wouldn't go for Elusive. Elusive doesn't proc enough to be worth it, and you already get it from the Anomalous Withering Step anyways. Sure, if you get Elusive on your boots as well, you can actually do tricks where you can actually reset the Elusive if you're good at it, but basically forget about Elusive. Tailwind, movement speed, cooldown reduction would be the best ever, obviously, and then also maybe life or cannot be frozen, but we're actually using Purity of Elements, so you probably don't need that. As for jewelry, the most important thing is flat, chaos, or physical damage. So I have this ring here to fix my resistances and my accuracy. This one was actually a little bit more expensive. I think it was like 4 to 5x, but basically what you're looking for is resistances, accuracy, life, maybe a space for chaos damage. You don't need any reduced mana cost because this doesn't use any mana, right? It's not a skill. And then I also have this Circle of Nostalgia, which I also paid a little bit for. But basically, here's the thing, right? You want the increased chaos damage while affected by Herald of Agony, and Herald of Agony has increased buff effect. The increased buff effect also gives you increased chance to poison. One thing I will say is that if you go for exactly this setup and you don't have this ring, you're not going to be at 100% chance to poison, which is obviously very important. So always going to your character sheet and see that your chance to poison from main hand hits is at 100%. Right now I don't have Herald of Agony on. It would be on 100%, but onto that later. Now, I also have this Onslaught for 4 seconds on hit in the implicit, which is completely unnecessary. This is obviously a crazy ring, right? But you can just get Onslaught on kill anywhere on your gear, because this is a mapper. You always have it up. You always killed recently, so you always have the Onslaught up. This was just kind of on the market for a little bit of a good price, right? So this this ring just gives you good flat damage, some chaos res, some attributes, and just a lot of damage overall. Next up for the flasks. Now, one thing you might be asking is, why the hell am I using a Witchfire Brew? What the hell is going on? Why don't I just get a Despair on hit ring? Would be way easier, right? Well, the main reason is this, right? So this is an aura. You don't have to hit anything in order to apply the curse to nearby enemies. And sometimes you actually don't hit with the knife, with the blades first, but your Plague Bearer that is around you actually does all the work itself. And at that point, if the enemy is not cursed, they don't get exploded. So in that case, I really like to have one curse from this and then one curse from like Asanas, for example, temporal chains on hit, right? So you don't get the explosion unless enemies around you are actually cursed. So you want to always have it up, right? So that's why I go for Witchfire Brew here. Taste of Hate is just my personal preference because I don't like dying all that much. If you don't care about it, don't run Taste of Hate. This is just so you don't get one shot in Scourge as much. Now, next up, I use a Quicksilver of the Lynx. This is the perfect one. You would obviously want 14% movement speed here, all the movement speed you can get. Now, for all my flasks, I'm using the, or for these two flasks, sorry, I'm using the use when charges reach full, because we want to automate as much as possible. I want to press as little buttons as possible. Jade Flask, because we're running Grace and we're actually evasion-based. Obviously, you would want even more evasion than that. You can get up to 60% increased evasion in the suffix. And then I have the Quartz Flask. Here's the thing, Quartz Flask, you don't really have to time it. Usually you're always going to be phasing because of Withering Step, but sometimes against bosses it can be a little annoying because when you place down your totems, the Withering Step or the phasing gets disrupted, right? It gets you out of phasing and then you don't throw any more blades. In that case, just press it, whatever. So that's also why I don't have it automated. Now then let's go quickly over the gem setup. Now first up, I have the sort of 7 link, right? Because we have 6 supports. Greater Volley, like I said in the intro, go for Greater Volley or GMP, whatever you want from the build. Deadly Ailments, Void Manipulation. Now, one thing I will say with Deadly Ailments is if you actually want to go for Leech, which I opted not to, most of our recovery actually comes from Life on Kill, which is fine enough in maps, right? But if you want to do more with the build and you want to go for Leech, definitely don't include Deadly Ailments because it's going to reduce your hit damage quite a bit. You can Leech with this build if you want to, but not using Deadly Ailments. You would have to instead run like Vile Toxins or something, right? Which would help you Leech, but overall it's going to be less damage. So I don't really care for Leech on this build. Honestly, I don't need Mana Leech because I'm not really spending much, right? But yeah, Divergent Greater Volley, like I said, Void Manipulation, yeah. Void Manipulation is huge. It's just a good multiplier. You don't need level 5. The +1 level to support its Chaos skill gems does nothing for us. This is not a Chaos skill, right? And then it doesn't, so you can look at what's exactly good in terms of quality and put that in here, because the shield actually has +8 quality of socketed support gems, but usually all these supports only give increased damage, so you can throw in whatever. I'm using Vicious Projectiles. Now, the good thing about Vicious Projectiles is this skill does not scale with attack speed at all, so it does not matter, right? So the downside is actually not a downside. This is straight up 59% more damage, right? Then we have Awakened Unbound Ailments, just to give us some poison duration and a lot more damage, right? And Awakened added chaos damage is extremely important. You can also go for normal added chaos damage, but what I will say is that at the point where you have the shield and you can already afford the build, I think you can spare the 20C or whatever for the Awakened added chaos damage. So definitely get that one. Then we have our Plague Bearer, which is extremely important. So what we do here is we have the Plague Bearer supported by Empower and increased area of effect. Once again, Plague Bearer can only be, the damage can only be increased by levels, and anything else doesn't do anything. You have to debuff enemies instead of buffing your damage, because it already takes your damage as kind of a threshold, right? So in that case, yeah, what you would want is like a +1 odds and offs, right? Maybe something like that. Then you can get the levels up. You would want a level 4 Empower to make it even bigger. You want to go for Anomalous increased area of effect, because the supported skills deal reduced damage, which is the downside of the quality, right? Usually you get 10% AoE, which is very good, but you have the downside. Isn't the downside here, because it cannot amplify it or also cannot reduce the damage, right? So Anomalous increased area of effect is the best one. Level 4 Empower, and a Plague Bearer, preferably a level 21. Now, if you want to min-max even more, you would want to go for either a Anomalous or a Divergent Plague Bearer level 21. I think the Anomalous one gives the chaos damage over time multiplier while you have it up, and I think the Divergent, or vice versa, one gives movement speed, one gives chaos dot, so definitely check those out. Probably one of those is best in slot, but you want it level 21. Then the next most important thing is Anomalous Withering Step. Now, the Anomalous basically just gives us additional wither debuffs, right, that get applied, and this gives us another 2. So normally this only gives 6, but with this it gives 2. I think level 21 does even more. I might have to check, but I also have Enhance on there, which gives it even more quality. Now, if you had a level 4 Enhance, it would give another Wither debuff, right? So there's, like I said, there's a ton to min-max here. Let's actually real quickly do this. Maybe I get lucky. Boom, I did not. Feels bad. All right, let's put that in here. And after that, we go for the auras, which are going to be here. Now, we're using Purity of Elements, Precision, and Grace. Now, in the endgame version, if you have a level 4 Enlighten, once again, expensive stuff, right? You would want also to get Malevolence in. But we cannot right now. We have Purity of Elements, Precision, and Grace. Obviously, Precision only as far as you need it to be or as far as your mana allows. We're also using Divergent Herald of Agony. This one actually bricked. It doesn't matter for me. The quality gives me increased chance to poison up to 20%. If it didn't brick, it can give you up to 40% in total. This only gives me 36. I'm still at 100%. Which is nice because of one of the jewels I have, but definitely check out if you actually have 100%. That's why Divergent is very, very important, but depending on your gear, you might not even need it. This ring also helps out a ton. You can maybe even go for both if you can figure your resistances out elsewhere. But Herald of Agony, extremely important on the build. Then we have our second 6 link, which is going to be Ancestor Protector Totems. Now, you might be thinking this is kind of a meme, right? I just wanted something for single target. This is the best thing I found, right? It's just very convenient to, and it kind of substitutes the playstyle well, right? You still don't have to do anything. You just pop down your totems, you kite around the boss, your knives are auto-aiming. So yeah, everything as normal. So these do more damage than War Chiefs, right? So I just took the Protectors. They're better for single target. They don't have any splash, so they are only single target, but that's exactly what we want, right? I have multiple totem support, Divergent multi-strike. Obviously, Awakened multi-strike would be better, but I'm not willing to pay that much, right? Awakened Void Manipulation. Once again, the +1 doesn't do anything, so it doesn't have to be level 5. And Awakened added Chaos damage, Awakened Deadly Ailment support for the most damage possible. And at the end here, we have a cast when damage taken setup with Steel Skin and increased duration. Just makes us a little bit more tanky. Definitely do see that you have enough mana unreserved to actually use this. Otherwise, the problem is you cannot really put Steel Skin on left click because that's where your anomalous, or your Withering Step goes, right? So maybe you have to find some other way to apply it. Maybe you have to actually cast it. Maybe just exclude it and level some gems while mapping and breezing through, right? Whatever you want. But yeah, that's it for the gems. As for the passive tree, we're starting out at the Occultist. Now, not really much interesting here. We're looking for life, damage over time multiplier, damage with poison would be really, really good as well. Maybe fixing some resistances, right? But life is very important if you actually don't want to die to Scourge, which I really don't want too much. Now, here's the thing. Number one thing, I'm running a Inspired Learning. These are actually kind of easy to get working. Now, a lot of the time you have to sacrifice like 5 points to run an Inspired Learning and it's not worth it. But as you can see here, all I have to sacrifice is one of these, right? So I'm not using Power Chargers, so this is completely useless. But I'm already using this. I'm using this and this either way, right? So I'm only sacrificing 1 point to actually get the Inspired Learning going. And it has been very good. If you have a Headhunter, you can even put it on top. It's going to be even crazier, right? I wouldn't really recommend going out of your way for extra ones, right? Like here, you would have to sacrifice several points. I would just say 1 is fine. If you want a second, sure, right? Whatever you want. We're going for a little bit of spell suppression. We're actually not going for 100%. If you want to go for 100%, you have to take this whole cluster, maybe have a little bit more on gear. We're just going for life, evasion. You definitely need the whole charisma cluster with the reservation mastery. Otherwise, you're not going to get anything into the build. Now, you can do chain support if you want to. You'll do a lot less single target damage, but I opted to go for Pierce here. So you can maybe save these 3 points, go for chain, but that's a lot less damage. So I just opted for the 3 extra Pierce because you need something for your main skill. As for large clusters, all we do here is just a normal chaos damage setup, right? Unholy Grace doesn't do anything. The attack speed doesn't really do anything. It does buff our totems damage though, because our totems do scale with it. So maybe that would actually be like a min-maxing where you get Unholy Grace in front. Skill effect duration doesn't really do much. This also doesn't really do much beyond damage. So the best would be having Unholy Grace in front just to get your totems a little bit beefier. And here I'm just using Flow of Life and Vile Reinvigoration. Now, after they nerfed the medium cluster notables, I felt like most of them are kind of same. So I might as well take the one that also makes me tankier, right? So I get 24 damage, life, regen. I get 24 damage, maximum energy shield, regen, right? We're kind of hybrid here. So it kind of works out. What you want to do eventually when you upgrade this build is you want to get a Glorious Vanity Timeless Jewel with Corrupted Soul here for an extra, I don't know, 700 energy shield. Usually worth it, right? I didn't really go for it in the end because I didn't really go for to min-max the build. But this would definitely make you even more tanky if you care about that. Other than that, we're also going for Ghost Dance. Now, this build doesn't have the most evasion, right? But it's kind of free. I mean, we would path up here anyways. We want the Atrophy. We want the Written in Blood. We want the Influence. It helps us a lot with just straight up damage. and giving us a little bit more reservation efficiency. But yeah, Ghost Dance is kind of a no-brainer. You don't even have to build too much around it. It's going to give you back like 600, 700 ES whenever you get hit, which is just huge, right? And also this part here, you don't have to do. I just wanted to get a little bit more spell suppress and a little bit more movement speed to make the build feel a little bit better. So overall, was the build worth it to make, even though the shield was that expensive? Hell yes. This was a ton of fun. I can just say that right now. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody because I know a lot of people don't really care about that quality of life, and they just want to have the strongest character possible, right? They want to go into simulacrums and destroy. With this build, I just made it for funs, and it's just so nice to play. It's so nice on your wrists as well. So yeah, if you like that kind of playstyle, that kind of Autobomber playstyle, and you know how to accumulate some currency, and you're a hipster like me maybe, you can go for this build. I will not be updating it or anything. I just wanted to throw it out there. Maybe you guys can pick up on it and make it even better. I'm looking forward to some of you guys' ideas as well. And yeah, that's it. But that's it for the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Now, as always, a huge thank you to my Twitch subscribers and my Patreons. I couldn't do these kind of videos without you. Thank you so much for the support. And yeah, build was super fun. We farmed a ton of logbooks with this. We farmed actually Lyra Arthane for some expedition scarabs. Farmed all the logbooks ourselves. Did mapping. It's so fun. It's very, very smooth. It will definitely not be a boss killer if you want to do Conquerors, if you want to do Cyrus. There's a million better builds that do not cost as much, right? But for what I wanted it to be, this basically completely delivered. It was super fun. Trying out Hidden Blade, I was very impressed. And yeah, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.